What happens to your company if sales are strong, but your delivery is weak and your finance is strong? Well, you sell a lot, but then you lose everybody out the back door because you're not delivering. And then even worse, what if sales is weak, marketing's strong, and finance is strong? Well, then you just got a bunch of people sitting around waiting to do something because nobody's selling anything.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.
Hey everyone, it's Bref. I'm back with another episode of the Aesthetics Growth Podcast, and today I'm super excited to hang out and to introduce you to someone I consider a friend, someone who's been growing businesses with tremendous experience for the last number of years. I want to introduce you on this show to Lyn Askin. Lyn is a lifelong entrepreneur. He's a certified EOS implementer who helps growth-minded businesses just like our audience to scale their business with intention. He's really all about service and about understanding what businesses need to help them to scale, to get past sticking points. And he's a real commitment to essentially leaving businesses in a better place than they were before he had that first encounter. Lyn, I'm super excited to welcome you to the show. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Rep. It's great to be here. I'm super excited to be on your show today.
Absolutely. Well, hey, first question, because you've got a really interesting journey, as I know a little bit about. You've been an entrepreneur for over a couple of decades. What got that started? Maybe you can let the listeners know and share a little bit about your entrepreneur journey.
Sure, Bref. I've been an entrepreneur my whole life. I grew up in a house with a lot of love, not a lot of money. And, to afford the things that you want to as a kid, I had to earn. And so I had a paper route when I was real young, 8, 9 years old, did that for a couple of years, got a job at a radio station at some point in my career and started a mobile disc jockey business, started building computers in my early 20s. I built one of the first online auctions in 1996. I built my first e-commerce store in 1997. And then I think I built my first website for a client in 1998. I built a website for a company called High Life Nutrition in Las Vegas, which merged with a company called Chef Jay. And I think they're still around today. I built their very first website. And then over the course of the next 20 years, I guess, built and kind of scaled a marketing agency. So that's kind of where my story sort of leads.
That's how we met, was through the marketing aspect, right? And just personally, it's been really cool to have known you as the agency business owner. A lot of our listeners here own businesses, of course, maybe haven't worked at marketing agencies. What's been amazing is to kind of have been with you on that journey as you've now evolved into a business growth consultant in a lot of respects. And I know that EOS has been part of that, but I think it is interesting to talk about that transition and maybe lessons that you've learned. And, for someone new to EOS, we can definitely get into that as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably the interesting part of the story is I was just running a fairly good marketing agency. Wasn't one of the biggest in the world or anything like that, but was fairly successful, maybe succeeding in spite of ourselves, but had a pretty good business, had probably 10 employees, a pretty good number of clients. But in 2020, Bref, I had a massive health scare, had a massive pulmonary embolism, and I collapsed in my yard. And as I laid there dying, essentially all I could think about was what kind of mess did I just leave my wife and son? And, a lot of us that are entrepreneurs, the business doesn't exist without us. And so if I'd have died that day, my business would have died with me. And I mean, thank God I survived and I'm still trying to figure out why, but I knew then that I had to make some major changes in my health and things like that, but really in my business. I wanted to build something that could live on without me or that could operate without me, that I wasn't required to be in the day-to-day and all the ins and outs. Because, if your business relies 100% on you, like I said, you don't have a business, you have a job. And so, as I thought about what I needed to do to take care of my wife and my son and my family, if I were to have another event like that, I looked up on the bookshelf and there was a book on there called Traction. And, I had bought the book in 2014 and kind of read it and like, oh, that's kind of nice. And I put it back on the shelf with all the rest. But in 2021 or early 2020, I really needed it. I needed a framework, I needed some structure. I needed to build some systems or processes into my business. And so I tried to self-implement and kind of struggled with that. I ended up hiring a professional or certified EOS implementer, and we had a remarkable transformation in our agency. We 3x'd our revenue, we 7x'd our profits. We grew from 10 employees to 27. Ultimately, I was able to take myself out of the day-to-day operations, let my team actually, build a great leadership team, let them run their departments without me having to have my fingers in everything. And ultimately, it led to me sort of falling in love with this EOS process and ultimately a successful acquisition of my agency, and then became a full-time EOS implementer where I help other agency owners and other business owners put this very simple set of practical tools inside their business to help them build a better business and live a better life.
And tons to unpack there. I was in the audience when you were on stage, and maybe for the first time delivering that message to a group as far as your journey, and really, that health potential, worst scare that really prompted you to just to think about your business differently. And some of the things you mentioned there, Lyn, as far as kind of like being stuck in the machine a little bit, and sometimes it takes that slap across the face or whatever that is in order to think about things differently. I think we can break down what would be really helpful is to, for anybody who isn't familiar with EOS, and you nailed it with, you work with business owners, you kind of have some certain types of businesses that you work with, but it's really, it's universal, the fundamentals and the system. And I know that our listeners can get and viewers can get so much value from understanding it a little better. For someone who's new to EOS, maybe hasn't even heard EOS, they've heard me and you maybe mention it like 4, 6, 10 times already. In plain English, how would you break it down? What is this EOS thing that we've been talking about?
Well, first of all, EOS is industry agnostic. So this system and framework will work in almost any industry. But what it is, Bref, it is a framework on which to run your business. I like to say that you can run your business on guesswork, you can run it on hard work, or you can run it on a framework. And EOS is that framework that helps you take a look at your business, simplify it really far down to like 6 key components of your business. And then we work to strengthen those 6 key components of your business, getting you to 80% stronger, better in each of those 6 key components. Because as entrepreneurs, as you well know, we're used to dealing with and usually are dealing with like 136 simultaneous issues. Mm-hmm. But what we found is if we can strengthen just those 6 key components, those 136 issues that we're dealing with tend to just fall into place because they're really symptoms of a root cause. And so when we strengthen those areas of your business, you can run a better business and live a better life. And like I said, in each one of those 6 key components, there's a couple of tools or disciplines that we use to help you grow each one of those areas of your business. So it's a framework. It is a framework for managing the human capital inside your business.
Fantastic. And a lot of the folks that listen to this, they're either a solo business owner, they're getting started, but you mentioned a team, right? When growing a business at some stage, unless they're happy being that solopreneur or whatnot, and some people are, growing a team is essential. And when it comes to, we'll say the EOS, the framework, or breaking it down as that entrepreneurial operating system, right? What would you say, like, what is the first thing that the audience would need to understand when it comes to getting value from this and implementing it in their business, or understanding what that looks like so they can use that type of framework to grow their business?
Well, I think a lot of us, we start our businesses because we have this dream of having more time, more freedom, more money. And the truth is, it's not like that for us most of the time. We start out doing something because we love it. And then, I don't know, let's just say Sally sells pies, for example, and her friends come to say, man, Sally, you should sell these. You could make a lot of money. So she starts doing that. She starts selling more. Next thing you know, she's got to deal with growth, and she's got to like, wow, I need somebody to help me with all these pie sales. And this is really what I signed up for. And now I've got to deal with taxes and insurance. And now I've got a team of people, and I got systems and processes and delivery and finance and money. And it's complex. EOS is really designed to simplify all of that, take all of those kind of complex things, simplify them down to, minimum viable work there, and really, I don't know, give you a framework on which to do those things. So I don't know if that was a very good explanation of what EOS is, but it's a framework on how to grow and scale your business and manage that growth. Because if you just want to stay a solopreneur, that's one thing. You can have a lifestyle business and it can take care of you, and that's great. But if you decide that you want to grow and scale, you've got to operate a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned it, and because of course we use the EOS system with our business, and just from using the EOS system with ClinicGrower, it's enabled us to help practices that we work with to help to point them in the right direction. And you mentioned Sally, we'll say, making the cakes, right? So for a lot of our are aesthetic practice owners. It's them. They've started. They've got some referrals. They've got some family members. They're injecting. They're doing the consultations. They're taking care of the bookkeeping. They've got the logo. They answer the phones. They do all this themselves. And then at some stage, like, I can't do all that anymore. So now I've got to get someone else to do it. And sometimes they'll hire that person and then they're listening to their call like, she shouldn't be saying it like that. She shouldn't be saying it like that. She shouldn't be doing a consultation like that. Why is she even doing that? So it comes down to those kind of those systems, right? And even to take it back a step further is understanding that vision, where they're going, right? Like you said, what that looks like for the business, and then breaking it down into compartments so that it's almost like a blueprint, or as you said, a framework for that business to operate within. Now, when it comes to our audience, any kind of practical tips that you could help to break down as to how they could get almost that crash course on EOS, because it's being used by millions of businesses across the world?
Yeah, there are at least 250,000 businesses running on EOS with an EOS implementer. There's countless others that are running on EOS and self-implementing. And so you can self-implement this system. There's a book called Traction. It is the guide for EOS. There's a lot of books in the EOS library. One of the ones I love is called Get a Grip. And for visionaries, I think it's a really cool sort of fable of the story of EOS. I think that's a great place to start. But the idea here is that when we run a business, we think we have to invent everything. We've got to invent how we hire, we invent how we share our vision. And quite often our vision is just in our heads, and we haven't really shared it with the team. So nobody really knows where we're going and how we're going to get there. And so what we're hoping to do is we're hoping to get your team, your entire team, on the same page with where we're going and how we're going to get there. Ultimately, all of us sort of rowing in the same direction towards a common goal. So EOS is designed to help you in a lot of different ways. But number one, we want to make sure that you guys have clear vision. And this is about, where do we want to go and how are we going to get there? I want to make sure that you get the right people in your team. And we say we want to make sure you have the right people in the right seat. Then we want to run your business on data, and on scorecards, on facts and figures and numbers, and not emotions. Then, of course, we want to make you guys really, really good at solving issues. Because when your vision component's strong, and your people component's strong, and your data component's strong, your business becomes a lot more transparent. So all of the obstacles and challenges and imperfections and impurities start to sort of pop out at you. I need to help you guys get really, really good at solving those issues as they arise. And so we're not just wrapping them up in duct tape and twine and shoving them in the corner, but we're solving those issues at the root and making them go away. And then, of course, we dig into your process, and we make sure that you, take your handful of core processes and you simplify them and document them and make sure they're being followed by all. And then to wrap all of that up, we bring your vision down to the ground and we execute on it with discipline and accountability in our traction component. So it's like a holistic approach to managing all of those moving parts in your business, all of the people, all of the systems, all of the processes, the vision, your dreams, your goals, your plans, and all of that. And, the discipline and accountability to actually get that work done.
Yep, 100%. I think we see it happening with people we speak with, or sometimes clients. There's the ones that have got these foundations in place and they're using a framework, or they've got their vision and mission, and they're able to communicate it, and they've got hiring frameworks, and they've got something working. And then there's the ones that have started the business, and all of a sudden it's chaos because they've skipped some of those things that you mentioned there. Now, one thing that you mentioned, which I know is a challenge for a lot of businesses, but it's that the right people in the right seats. And can you talk a little bit, Lyn, about the philosophies, about how you help businesses with that component, with getting the right people in, and then ensuring that everything is as it should be with performance and alignment?
Yeah, so right people, right seats. That's actually it came from Jim Collins from his book Good to Great. But I'll break it down for you in a way that's really simple to understand. You got to have the right people in the right seats, and right people are people that live our core values. These are people that we want to be around, that consistently exhibit the core values that we've developed for ourselves as a company. Right seat, that's people who are great at their job. That's people with God-given talent or ability or desire or want to that come to work every day just with a desire to be great. And so when you can combine those two things, now you can have the right people in the right seats. The challenge is when one of those things is off. You might have somebody who's, heck, maybe you love them, maybe they're great, maybe you want to be around them, maybe you like hanging out with them, but they're not consistently excellent in their job. And so we got to coach them up, and we got to teach them what it looks like to do their job consistently well. Or we have to make a decision about whether or not they're really a great fit here. The other challenge you could have is you could have somebody who's great at their job, and they're hitting their numbers and doing all that stuff, but they're just eating away at you at the core because they don't fit your core values. That kind of problem, that will tear you apart from the inside out in ways that you can't even understand. So we help you, give you some guidelines on what it means, because most of us as entrepreneurs, I think we want to love our teams, and we want to help people along, and we don't see them through a true light, and we're very empathetic. I know I kept people on my team longer than I should have that just weren't up to speed. And I'll give you the tools and the disciplines to look at that and analyze it from black and white, whether or not that person is the right person and whether or not they're in the right seat.
I mean, it's crucial, like you said, having that engine, that nucleus for the business, the people and everything. But what would you say to someone who might say, you know what, yeah, that all sounds great, but look, I just need marketing. Everything is great. I just need to get to the market core values. Yeah, I'll do that after. Really just want marketing and sales.
Well, I think it's important that your business be strong across the board. You know, if you want to simplify it to just say, okay, sales and marketing is one function. We got to go out and sell the product. We've got to deliver the product, and then we've got to collect the money. So if you look at those three items, and what happens to your company if sales is strong, but your delivery is weak and your finance is strong? Well, you sell a lot, but then you lose everybody out the back door because you're not delivering. What if your sales is strong, marketing is strong, and finance is weak? Well, then you sell a lot and you do a lot, but then, you could be bringing $1 million in and 1.2 million could be going out the back door, right? So we don't have any financial control. And then even worse, what if sales is weak, marketing strong, and finance is strong? Well, then you just got a bunch of people sitting around waiting to do something because nobody's selling anything. And so we truly believe that all of the main functions of your business need to be strong. And so to make them strong, man, there's a lot of steps that have to go into that. And that really is getting the right people in the right seats. And to do that, you really have to understand what your core values are, what your core focus is, what your big 10-year target is, what your marketing strategy is, what your 3-year picture is, your 1-year plan, and all of those things. Yeah, it's a bit of a process. But it's not magic. It's simple, real world, practical tools.
100%. I love the example you gave with the marketing, sales, and finance. And for anybody listening, as Lyn said, it really is real world. And this is about having a foundation. It's about doing the quote unquote, the boring stuff or the unsexy stuff. A lot of the time, the marketing and the sales can be the really sexy stuff. But Lyn sometimes will speak with practices, and especially in the beginning when we're putting our marketing campaigns together, our growth marketing campaigns. And it takes a little bit of time sometimes for the penny to drop, for it to sink in, that it really is important to talk about and identify the things that you mentioned. You spoke about the mission and vision, but how that ties into the 3 uniques. Like, what's unique, or how can I uniquely communicate how my medical spa or my cosmetics or my business is different from anybody else? A lot of time that's about the people, the way that the business is delivered, the way the services are delivered, and things like that. So I just wanted to kind of tie that together a little bit for the listeners, because we ourselves found as we've grown as a company that sometimes that changes. And with evolving technology, and especially in the aesthetics industry with new equipment and tools and education with the practices educating themselves, there really is a need to look at that, to have that documented so that they can see, so the business can see, okay, what's my vision? What's my 3-year plan, 10-year plan? What's unique about my business? And then that information is the foundation that can be used from the marketing campaigns to build upon.
I think you bring up a great point there. And I think it's a really good example of how we simplify in EOS. Marketing strategy can be complex, but in EOS, we make it simple. And it's simply 2 things. Who's our ideal prospect, and what are we going to say to them? If we could create this ideal target market, unique person that we wanted to do business with, and if 80% of our clients were that person, we'd have a better business. And they were lined up in front of you, what would you say to them? So it's who should you talk to and what you should say to them is how we simplify your marketing strategy. And we do that. There's 4 parts to marketing strategy, but that's just a really good example of just how simplistic this can get, but also be super powerful. The ability to simplify is one of the leadership abilities we teach you. And, and I've said it in the session room. Hey guys, are we overcomplicating this? Can we make this simpler? And that's just, that's on me. Everything about EOS is designed to make everything simpler. And so um, it's my job to point it out to my clients, and it's my client's job to kind of embrace that concept of dumbing it down a little bit and making it simpler.
Mhm.
It's the blocking and tackling. I don't know. Maybe that's not
Yep.
the right metaphor for the audience, but if you're talking about football, we're talking about blocking and tackling. It's the most important thing that you have to do.
Yep. What's the expression? I mean, simplicity over complexity. Simplicity scales, and complexity it doesn't. When it comes to a lot of the business owners here, especially ones that are looking to break through a level of business, you get started, you hit generally a revenue milestone, you're hiring. When it comes to making some of those breakthroughs, maybe even in just maximizing time, reducing stress, some of the outputs really from implementing the EOS system appropriately. Can you talk us through maybe a couple of examples or anything that stands out with your experience and how you've enabled businesses to do that?
Yeah, I think one of the tools that we use a lot in EOS is called delegate and elevate. And this is really about you doing what you're best in the world at, and delegating the things that you either don't like to do or aren't very good at. And so we give you a tool that, because at some point you're going to hit your capacity. Maybe you're a 40-hour week person. Maybe you're a 60-hour week person. I don't know. Let's just assume that we're all 50-hour week people. But when you look at your business and you look at your accountability chart, you look at all the things you have to do, you might have 60 hours of work a week. And if you do, you're at 120% of your capacity, which means either you're going to have to work a lot more hours and be away from your family, or you're going to have to find someone that you can delegate 20% of your work to. And so we give you the tools to kind of to map out your routines, the things that you touch, and we help you kind of plot and put them in quadrants of things that you love to do and you're great at, things you like to do and you're good at, things that you don't like to do but you're good at, and then that bottom right-hand corner is the things that you don't like to do and you're not good at. We try and figure out how to get those things off your plate. So I know it's not a specific example, but that's just one of the tools that helps you get more of the things done that you need to get done, where you are working in your unique ability and you are working at the appropriate highest use and value of your time. I mean, every time I don't know exactly what it is in your aesthetics practice, but I mean, where do you make the most money? Spending time with your clients or sweeping in the back, right? So there's things in your business that you, quite frankly, could delegate off to somebody else at a lower dollar value, so you can spend your time doing the things that bring in the most money.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there certainly is an elevation where a lot of time, if it's the solo business owner, they're doing everything, and then it's make sure that there are systems to hire that next person appropriately. Generally, Lyn, within medical aesthetics, if it's a med spa, for example, be a little bit different if it's a plastic surgeon. But if they're starting from solo and expanding, maybe they're doing the injecting themselves, and then maybe they hire an esthetician, and then maybe they're juggling the phone calls, and it's time to bring somebody else in, and then there's office management. And it is interesting. You start off with the skills, and then of course you have to develop new skills as a leader and bring in specialists to help you to scale as well. And that's kind of what we're talking about here with the EOS system as well. And then it comes down to that decision. Do you, as that, yes, you're the business owner, but what fulfills you? Do you want to be the one who is injecting all the patients, or doing a certain amount per week and then working on certain aspects of the business? I think that's where the reflection and making sure that you do have the right vision and accountability chart, so that when you're adding team members right through EOS, that you got those right people in the right seats to enable you as that visionary, as that entrepreneur to set forth and to grow your business.
Yeah, I imagine that your audience is thinking about growing and scaling. It is difficult to do everything yourself, and so at some point you have to figure out how to clone yourself in some sort of way. Whether it's a bookkeeper, an accountant, or an esthetician, or some sort of growth. And where we want you to spend your time is doing your highest dollar value activities. And that might be, you might be the big idea person. You might be the one that manages the biggest relationships. You might be the visionary for your company and start planning out your second location and things like that. Again, if you're stuck in the day-to-day, then you're working in your business. We want to make it so that you can spend time intentionally working on your business instead of just working in it.
Then what would you say, switching gears a little bit, but when it comes to those telltale signs like, hey, I need to do something right now. The alarms are going off. I need to have a system in place. Are there certain things that stand out for you, or things that you've identified that can help the
Yeah,
audience to
of
say,
course.
hey, I need to do this?
Yeah, some of the biggest challenges we face, number one, are people. Do you have people in your business? If so, EOS is probably a good platform for you. Do you want more profit in your business? If so, EOS is probably a great system for you. Are you running your business, or is it running you? When you start feeling
Yep.
like I am no longer in control of this business and now I'm a slave to it, it'd be a great time to look at some sort of business framework to start putting the tools and disciplines in place to get you the business that you've dreamed of. Because, I don't think any of us signed up to work 60, 80 hours a week. I don't think that's why we start our businesses. We thought we were going to have this freedom and this time and this extra money and things like that. And like I said a bit ago, that isn't the case for most of us.
Yeah. Yep. I don't know if we used that word earlier, but I think that's really what we're talking about here is freedom, is having a system that frees the business owner to do what you initially started the business for, which is to make some impact, to enjoy life at different levels, whether it's getting out of the ER to grow your medical aesthetics practice or something else. And when it comes to actually implementing this or having a system in place, you mentioned Get a Grip. People could go read that. They could go to YouTube. They could go to Google. They could go to ChatGPT and kind of try and figure all this stuff out, which we did for a while at our company. And we used the frameworks, kind of that EOS system for a number of years. But I think it would be really valuable to maybe, if you could, just describe what it looks like for a business to actually work with someone like yourself, with an implementer, to have that implementer come in and work directly with them and their team to implement the system. And maybe just talk about what that experience looks like with the meetings and the cadence. And I know we don't have too long, but if you could tie it together for audience, I think that would be powerful.
Sure. Yeah, there's a couple of ways to implement EOS. One is to do it yourself, to self-implement. It's certainly doable. I think you can get yourself a copy of Traction. You can buy a copy of What the Heck is EOS for the rest of your team. And you can go through and follow the book. And, in the back of the book, basically tells you how to implement this system. It is simple. It is not easy. Okay, so this is a simple system. It's just not always easy, because what happens when you have to implement in your business is you, as one of the most impactful sort of intellectual people in your business, now gets pulled out of working on the business that day, and now you're the one that trying to figure out how to implement EOS. And so what we found is that you take one of the strongest voices and most powerful voices and brains in the business, and you make them implement EOS. Now, contrast that with somebody like me who's done hundreds and hundreds of sessions with, full day sessions with clients, and is expertly trained and is, 100% focused on mastery of the system that allows you to take that day and actually work on your business. You're not the one having to implement it. You're not having to try to figure it out. But what's really powerful about it, and I don't understand why this works, but that third party outside voice that your team somehow listens to, I liken it to, your parents. When your parents tell you something, you kind of roll your eyes and like, oh yeah. And then somebody else tells you the same thing and you're like, oh, now I get it. And so there's that commercial with the TV dad, and the regular dad tells the kid something and then TV dad says it. It makes sense. That's me. I'm the TV dad. I'm the guy that comes in and guides you through the process. And because I've got so much experience and I believe I have my superpower, I think, is taking this system and making it really, really simple so that you guys can implement. It's amusing to me that the teams, they don't want to disappoint me. And it's really cool to, one, because I come in and I don't just it's really quick. This is a good point. I had a business owner come to me and said, Lyn, we want to do EOS, want to get started. This is our first day. And I said, no, hang on. I got to meet with your team. We got to do a 90-minute meeting. It's free. I just want them to tell me they want to do it. This can't be another thing that we force upon our team.
Right.
I'm gonna lay this out to them, and when they see the system and they decide it's a good idea, then they buy into the system. If not, it's just oh no, here's my flavor of the month visionary, just put more work on us, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when we lay it out and the team buys in, and the team builds the core values together, and the team builds the core target together, and the team builds the marketing strategy together, now you're building something real. And it's not just you dictating, being a dictator from the top. It is a truly collaborative environment where our leadership teams work together to build something special.
Well, I'm so glad you mentioned that, because I think that is part of the magic of working with you and having, an EOS implementer by your side. Is just that is, a lot of us businesses, we start the business and we put the plans together, and then we're leading, and at some stage it's like, well, we're just kind of telling, unless we all get on the same page. And some of the things you mentioned with, getting on the same page with core values, with our company, especially as the business owner, if you want to elevate and do different things and have a team that's really bought in. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that. That's been, just potently powerful for us. And on the other side, Lyn, I can tell you that we see practices that actually go to the moon, right? A lot of businesses will, wow, how do they do it? They're just that med spa, that cosmetic surgeon is just crushing it. They're blowing it up. And other practices struggle. And time again, it is down to, it's not always sales and marketing. Yes, that helps. We do that at ClinicGrower, and that's great. But a lot of the time, you can stack on sales and marketing and spend money and all these different things. But unless you have that cohesiveness as a team, bought in together, core values, the team, they fight together, they struggle together, but they win together. And that really is the key that I see time and time again. So for anyone listening, and who you are, if you've got that team that maybe when you say something or you deliver your message, or you're getting that love, or they're coming to you with ideas to grow the business, or on the other side, you're like, nobody gets me. They're not listening to me. Then that's a red flag as well.
Yeah. I think the difference, I think EOS was created, Gino said that he created EOS because he saw a difference in two companies. Very, very similar to what you're saying there. But the difference is the 5% of the companies that are doing really well, making progress. Then there's these 95% that are, kind of working their tails off, spinning their wheels and not really going anywhere. Now we're all working hard. Like even the 5%, those guys are working hard too, because that's kind of what we do as entrepreneurs. But the difference between those two companies is the 5%, they actually solve their problems on a regular basis, and they solve them at the root, and they make them go away, and then they go and work on a new set of problems. So they're always making progress. The 95%, they're dealing with the same issues over and over and over again, in the worst case of business deja vu ever. And so they're just spinning their wheels. And the difference between those two is why EOS was created. He saw some companies growing and thriving, and he saw some very, very similar companies struggling. And the difference was, we solve our problems, we do it together, and we solve them at the root, and we move on to new problems, because there's always going to be new issues. But you get to work on better and new issues. And as humans, we need progress. We need to grow.
100%. As humans, as anybody watching the show as well, is we're looking for that, for growth. We start a business to grow, to make more impact. And I know personally, and I'm sure a lot of you listeners and viewers can understand too, is that when you're not making progress, when you don't have that momentum, that's when it just doesn't feel good. And so there's, obviously a lot of aspects that can go into that, but just having these systems in place and having those fundamentals, I think is really cool.
That feeling of being stuck, we call it hitting the ceiling. It's been scientifically proven that businesses don't grow in a straight line. So you will have periods of evolution and revolution in your business, but you are and will get stuck. How you break through those ceilings is really important. And having the skills to break through those ceilings is something we teach you in EOS.
Awesome. Lyn, for anyone who this resonated with, or was just curious learning either more about perhaps EOS or potentially working with you, what's the best way for someone to get in touch to find out?
Yeah, I'm really easy to find, Bref. I think I'm the only Lyn Askin on the planet. So if you were to type my name in one of those fancy search boxes on Google or somewhere, and you could find me on LinkedIn, find me on Facebook. You could send me a message, go over to lynaskin.com. You can drop me an email at lyn.askin@eosworldwide.com. I'll give you all those links. We can put them in the show notes. Certainly people can connect with me there. But I do sort of just want to let people know that you can read the book Traction, and it's a great book. But I can show you the live action version of that too. If you want to jump on a free 90-minute call, me, you, your leadership team, I'll walk you through the entire Traction system. I'll learn about you. You'll learn about me. I'll show you all the EOS tools, and I'll show you exactly what it looks like to work with us. No pressure, no obligation. Truly help first, and I want to help you understand what this system looks like and see if it's a good fit for you.
Lyn, thank you so much. That's incredibly valuable for anybody who takes you up on that offer. I know firsthand.
Very good.
Well, Lyn, thanks so much. Really appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks. This is super fun. I hope to come back again. And if if you find it valuable or you get good feedback from this, we could do a webinar, we could do a workshop, we could do all kinds of fun things to share the message of EOS with your audience. I'd love for them to get more structure in their life and get closer to running that business they truly dreamed of.
This is the Aesthetics Growth Podcast.